Welcome to the Crow's Nest podcast, the official podcast of Candace Crow Design. I'm Candace Crow. Today we have two exceptional guests, Christopher Newland, Esquire, and Dr. Andrew Rosenthal. Chris is an attorney and lobbyist for the Florida Society of Plastic Surgeons and legal counsel for the Aesthetic Society. He's been keeping physicians on the right side of medical law for decades. First at the Florida Medical Association, now representing societies and surgeons across multiple specialties. Dr. Andrew Rosenthal, I call him Dr. Drew, just finished his term as FSPS president and serves as committee chair for ASPS. He's been practicing in Palm Beach County for over 20 years and has built a reputation for tackling cases that require high-level experience. Oh, and he competed on MasterChef, so backing down from a challenge definitely isn't his style. We'll be digging into the intersection of technology, compliance, and marketing and aesthetic plastic surgery. From smartphone photography, creating unintentional ethics violations, to ADA compliance, and we'll even hear a few tantalizing horror stories from Chris. Welcome. Dr. Rosenthal and Christopher Newland, thank you so much. It's just really, truly a delight of mine to be able to have this discussion with you. It's such an important conversation that we're going to have, and it's so jam full, packed full of thoughts that really need to get flushed out. So I don't want to just zip and hurry through it, but I think I've got like 7 or 8 points that we need to talk about. So, should we have to come back and do this again, I hope y'all would be willing to come back and talk to our audience. So, welcome. And y'all know that we work in the industry, so largely our audience is going to be plastic surgeons, aesthetic practices, some med spas, and just a couple of dermatologists, a lot of practice managers, a lot of people that work with before and after photos because nurses and all that kind of thing. So they have lots of questions that we hear every day. To have two, authority on our podcast to be able to help talk about those questions is huge. So thank you again. We're going to start off with the big one. We're going to start off with authentic quality before and after photography and how it's presented. Gosh, the standards were written before digital photography, and we've kind of crept along with that. So we've got something now called computational photography. And so Dr. Drew, I know you've put a lot of research into that and thought into that. So let's just lead off the way with our Master Chef competitor.
That was a long time ago now, Candace, but I still cook. But yeah, that was a long time. I was on season 3 of MasterChef. Thanks for having us for this. I think this is it's a great opportunity, great audience to speak to, and the very interesting, topics to address. Yeah, I mean, photography. So, what you all have done in trying to present before and after photos in a way to really help patients, and that's what we tell our patients is when we ask them to use their photos is, you're helping everybody like you who came here that wanted to say, hey, is this person, how, what is their vision? Are they good? Like, and so to be able to do that, and the more photos you can show, obviously, the better. But you said the most important thing, which is they have to be real photos. And going back, yeah, these the standards for these were written, pre-digital photography, and they're super important in keeping lighting consistent and photography consistent. So when I was a resident, we had a visiting professor come in, and he gave a very cool talk. And he set up and introduced himself, and he showed before and after pictures. And I'll put afters in quotes here. Um, for his whole talk, and he got to the end, and we said, pretty good. I think these people definitely looked better. There was nothing that was like knocked it out of the park, but he got to the end of the talk, and he said, none of these patients had anything done. This was all photographic technique. changes in lighting, changes in f-stop, and the patients looked different. They looked like they had surgery. And so that was a real eye-opener for me. And that was, again, before the time of digital photography. So, we've concentrated so hard on, having the consistency in photos and distance and clothing and makeup and all this kind of stuff, which unfortunately not enough people follow. And it's a real problem in the industry. But the whole idea of computational photography is mind blowing. So, we always say, your photos shouldn't be filtered, they shouldn't be retouched. But if you're taking a picture with an iPhone or an iPad traditionally, now there are ways to defeat those within those cameras with certain apps, right? Because right now they've got three lenses, so they're choosing between lenses and what looks better, and they're sort of morphing this together between multiple photographs. So the picture you're taking when you hit that button, actually the button would be here, right? Not here anymore, is not necessarily truth. It's sort of the best thing that the iPhone can put together. So there's technically filter AI, whatever you want to call it, into doing that. That's aside from all the lighting stuff, and you can make the argument that it helps in many ways because it's helping to correct for lighting inconsistencies. But there's also like it can be used for good or evil,
And
and
let's
so
be
it's a big
honest.
problem.
Yeah, this kind of
But go
stuff
ahead,
has
Chris.
happened for 40 years. I mean, the before pictures, the patient's usually not smiling, they're slumped or whatever. And then you make sure, even 40 years ago, that the after pictures, they're smiling, the chin's up. So manipulating the photographs has never really been new. It's just we're now in a new age where it's A, almost automatic, and B, the enhancements may or may not be reflective of the actual procedure being done.
So the
Yeah,
deal,
and even position. Sorry, Candace. Even position. Like I see people show breast pictures or body liposuction pictures, and the first one's the arms down, and the before you keep the arms up. We all look better that way.
Yeah.
So,
so yeah, it's time to address the whole thing, but this one thing about computational photography is you can't turn it off. You don't even know it's on. Most doctors don't even know they're using it. And according to Apple and Google's own studies, every single photo is being automatically altered by 20 to 70%, according to Apple and Google. They don't even know it's happening. So last time we talked, Chris, you just said, go ahead and just put on a notice that this photo was taken with a smart device or
Yeah.
something like that.
It, on being, no, the Aesthetic Society, for instance, says is manipulating photographs by any other means is, in fact, an ethical violation. And the Board of Medicine in Florida has somewhat a similar rule. But the key in both of those is deceptive. And the least that you can do is disclose that you're using these filters, which are somewhat automatic. And that at least protects the plastic surgeon from a charge that they were deceptively misleading the patient. You're saying, hey, these have been enhanced because that's what they have. That at least protects you to a certain extent from an ethical violation or a complaint at the Florida Board of Medicine that you're manipulating photos so in a way that is deceitful.
So even though I work for plastic surgeons, they pay my mortgage, they pay our payroll, everything. I believe I work for the patient. And I really don't want anything deceiving for the patients, so that is something I'm stuck on yet.
Yeah.
But Dr.
well,
Rose,
it's
yeah.
yeah, no, it's hard too because you know, as a lawyer, Chris will tell you this, right? The law is often made for the people who are going to follow it. When people are breaking it, there's nothing you can do. So how do you get people not doing this? We deal with this all the time with people in truth and advertising and all this other stuff, which is pretty rampant in the state of Florida. So, how do you get everybody to sort of adhere to this, and what do you do with that? And it's interesting also, I'm working with a resident on a project looking at some results for not basically subclinical results on Botox and fillers, and to try and catch some of the subtleties, and he's using AI to do this. But it is it's a retrospective off of photos, And when he was testing the model, he was getting about 20% noise. And he finally figured out that even though he thought he was being pretty consistent, it's the device that's putting the noise in it. It's the correction. So we're sort of backtracking to try and figure out how to correct for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And let's
so
be honest that if someone did not manipulate the photos at all, and they used all those apps, and that's what they put on their website, you're putting yourself at a competitive disadvantage because the guy across the street is enhancing those photos, and his results are going to look better. And nobody wants to have that out there where your results look worse than your competitors, even if you've got the exact same outcomes.
I'm a feisty one on that, Chris.
Hmm.
It's like I'm still for truth in advertising. You're going to get better patients if you are brutally honest with your results. You're going to
Hmm.
get the kind of patients that you can serve the best. Whenever you overpromise, I know this as a business owner, whenever I overpromise, it's hard to sleep at night. I'm always on the run, like, oh my God, I didn't deliver what I said I'd do. And so I'm really like, if this is, I'm really for truth in advertising.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, I am. I'm just acknowledging what goes out there in the world. As a lawyer, one of the things I counsel the plastic surgeons on each and every time I talk to them, do not overpromise, underpromise, and overdeliver. You're going to have much happier patients. There are some people in this state who advertise scarless breast augmentation,
It's
and there's
silly.
just no
It's
way
silly.
that can happen. A great plastic surgeon can minimize the scar, but there's no way that you can do that without any scarring.
Yeah, yeah. So then that got me thinking about, I think the last time we talked, we only brought up the computational photography, but I was talking with Donovan and stuff, and we see before and afters every day. We work with before and afters every day. So we've seen it all. We've seen screenshots of before and afters people will send to us. We've seen before and afters named with the names of the files have patient names in them. We've seen PDFs. We've seen like 10 kilobyte before and afters that are so small that they're so blurry that you can't even. So, like it just brought up the whole conversation of quality, authenticity and quality. And when we redesigned the new Bragg Book Gallery, we put a quality score in the gallery so they knew when they do their gallery, the quality of the presentation and the quality of which they use the tool. So there's a score in there. Oh, I know we can do a little bit better. Okay, let's log in there and, get our presentation just a little bit more spit shined or whatever. We could do some kind of quality score, some kind of authenticity score for a before and after case. I don't know if maybe I did propose a point system, minimum resolution, lighting consistency, editing restrictions, and affidavit of authenticity, the industry standard angles, no lens distortion, camera settings, so forth, and the framing and preparation, no earrings, whatever. But maybe, Dr. Drew, there could be an AI tool that could kind of run through the galleries and there could be an authenticity quality score.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the possibility of that. I think that's something I've really been thinking about. And like I said, it's one of the residents who I'm working with is super smart on this stuff, and we've chatted about this. I think it would be great. And I think if you can present those scores, I think they should be presented to patients, right? This is the authenticity score of this photograph, like not just for us to make sure we're doing it right, but if you had a tool that you could do that with, that would be wonderful. Um, what do you think about that?
I think
So,
that actually works very well as far as disclosing something that may otherwise be deceptive. The authenticity score on this particular photograph is a 95. And that's where you could go after your competitors. Ask for the authenticity scores of their after pictures.
yes,
And
I like
when they
this.
say,
I
oh,
did
it's a
too.
20%, you got to start asking other questions as a
It's
patient.
exciting. Yeah, and you know what happened during COVID is we just lost confidence in some of the medical professions, and that is what I don't want to have happen in our industry is loss of confidence now that AI is generating, before and after photos, it's uh, I do believe we need something like this.
I know. I mean, think about how we made Chris look on his new
I
on his new
was
profile
gonna bring that
picture.
up. Do you know?
It's low on the authenticity score, but it is a beautiful picture.
It sure is. And do you know, that's in Photoshop now.
Mhm.
Take this image. Donovan could come in here and tell you exactly how he did it, but it only took like a few minutes.
But the interesting thing about all this is we talk about these filters and how they affect our before and afters and everything else, but think about this computational photography and how it's sort of interacting in the real world. Not only filters, but just the computational photography in general. We see so many more photos of ourselves than we ever did before. On Zoom like this, but also, just the stills that are everywhere. I always say there's going to be some alien civilization that comes to Earth, and it's at some point when we're all gone, when all the archives are here, be like, these people took a lot of pictures. So, but it's sort of what also drives the aesthetics and all of this stuff too, is that people we're such a visual species to begin with, but now we are presented with images of ourselves all the time. And there's good to this of what is possible. And we now have so many more photos of us when we were younger. People, you can pull up 30 photos of yourself from 5 years ago, which we didn't used to have. You go back. I mean, we took one photograph, or the daguerreotype back in. You remember what those are. And so it's sort of both ways. Doesn't It's kind of interesting when I think about it in that manner, because the photos are sort of driving this aesthetics, and then the aesthetics are sort of driving the photos, and now we're talking about sort of the circle of this. And
Yes,
authenticity is important.
and it's the number one or number two most visited portion of every plastic surgeon's website. It's what potential patients want to see. I mean, it's got to be key to our industry. So maybe we could get a course on it at the next year's FSPS meeting. Maybe we could get a panel put together for some hot topics or something even before that.
Candace, let me ask a question of you. And this is something that this sort of came up a little bit and then kind of went away. But when we look at our photos and things like that, first of all, the angles of the images that we take in the office isn't necessarily the angle that people sort of see us. We make people hold their head very straight, but if you look even when we're on camera, like we all tilt our head a little bit to one side or the other. If you notice photos of yourself, we do that because subconsciously we know that's our good side even.
Yeah.
And then also these are also static images, and it's also important how people move. And there was a little bit of a move to video and quick clips, because that's really important, especially on face lifts and things like that, of how people are moving and whether their speaking is natural. And so what do you think maybe the role of video is in this, going forward, as opposed to just photographs? And does video do the same thing computationally?
On a smart device, yes.
Okay.
But really, really good point because there was a gentleman, and I wish I could remember his name right now. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes. But there was a gentleman maybe 15 years ago that did video before and afters, and he would, have them go through a sequence of facial gestures, and you could catch like a tick or something that may have a problem with the face before a facelift and then afterwards and it was very valuable and he passed away and he sold that to ASPS and so I don't think they did anything with it but he had the whole system down and we had talks of working that into Bragg book and stuff and he got sick and we just didn't get that done. But I'm definitely interested in doing something like that with something that's authentic and, valuable, valuable for knowing which doctors to pick for whatever procedure. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point, Dr. Drew. Well, let's move on to topic two. And topic two is no BAA, no PHI, regardless the inconvenience. All right, so the problem with the smartphone and a smart device is that, they back it up to the cloud, and you can't get a BAA with the cloud. So who wants to talk about that?
I'll start with that just on a legal basis, and you're absolutely right. iCloud is not going to give you a business associate agreement, although that is what technically you should be doing. At the minimum, though, you should be checking iCloud's terms of service to see how confidential they're keeping this stuff. There are also filters out there that if you can, you make sure that you put it on a secure cloud, that there's an additional layer of security on it. At a minimum, however, disclosure is big. As long as you tell the patient that, hey, all these pictures are being backed up to the cloud, and I cannot vouch for their security. Remember that iCloud is also not a covered entity under HIPAA, and therefore they're not bound by the same security and privacy rules that you are. The patient needs to at least be aware of that, and it should be on your HIPAA form that this is where the stuff is going. We protect it as much as we can, but we cannot make absolute guarantees. Is that 100% compliant when you say that? I don't think it is, but in the real world, that's what you can accomplish.
It's very interesting. And there's and I don't want, our listeners and viewers to think that storing it locally is any safer, especially with a lot of bad actors that have, hacked, hospital systems, but even individual practices. There's been a slew of this, and I know that Chris knows about this. So ideally, you're using a compliant solution to take your photos, and that they are should be HIPAA compliant. So I know RX Photo is. I'm sure. I don't want to speak on a term, but I'm sure that TouchMD,
It is.
does have that arrangement. But yeah, I mean, ultimately you are safer in the cloud, but you have to be using the appropriate cloud. Yeah, if that makes any sense, it has to be with a provider that can assure to the best possible ability, so that they are, and you should have a BA available with those type of entities. But just taking pics on your iPhone and keeping them there, or keeping them on a local server, bad idea.
Yeah.
It is truly a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So I want to move on. People are going to take pictures the way they take pictures, and they're going to come to you, Chris, when they need you. So we did our duty there. But
It's easier and cheaper to keep you out of trouble than get you out of trouble.
yeah, this is true. When it comes to passwords, that's truly, truly the truth here. I would guarantee that about 80% of those passwords out there are terrible. Oh my gosh, I see them every
Yeah.
week. There'll be a kid's
No,
name.
no, no. Everybody thinks we use 1, 2, 3, 4, but we use 4, 3, 2, 1, because no, I'm just saying, nobody's guessing that.
Yeah. There are a couple of things I've had some IT people tell me about passwords that two things. A, capital letters within the password are actually a big deterrence and it increases the strength of your password exponentially. Also, the use of punctuation characters, whether it be a pound sign, whether it be an exclamation point, something that is not a letter or number increases it. But yes, you've got to have a strong password because the hackers have just gotten very, very good.
They really, really have. We once had a client come to us that had his email address hacked and blacklisted, which actually blacklisted his website.
Mhm.
And it became a problem for years and years. It wasn't something that could just be cleaned up very easily. You got a story to tell, though, don't you, Chris?
Yes, this is from a sole practitioner who got hacked by some Russians, and we instantly got in touch with the number that they gave us. They wanted $100,000, and I tried to explain that we didn't have $100,000. This was a sole practitioner. We actually, it was an unbelievable hour. I talked to my Russian counterpart who had very good English, but obviously was Russian. We got it down to $20,000, and he said, "Here's where I need it." And obviously, he had a very secure password, and his account was very secure. We gave the money to them, and it was my guy's medical records were up within seconds of the transaction processing. Now, I'm not saying that you always give in to the hackers, but if you do, these guys actually are honorable thieves because their whole model is based upon their reputation that if you pay them the money, they will release your records. If they didn't, the next person would never pay the ransom. And therefore, no, it's something to consider. What you also should be doing is if you are dealing with the kidnappers in this case, make sure that you get a guarantee from them that they have frozen your account. They have not actually looked at it. That way, if anyone comes in, you can say, okay, we had assurances and we paid for those assurances that the system was locked, but it had not gone to a third party. That can make all the difference when it comes to defending a HIPAA violation. And no, HIPAA violations are not cheap. The Office of Civil Rights, unfortunately, tends to go after the victim for not having a strong enough firewall rather than going after the Russian hackers because, frankly, they can't get to those people. But they feel like they have to do something. So, is it still a HIPAA violation? Yes, because you did not fulfill your duties under the privacy rule, but it is much better if you have guarantees that the information was in fact not disclosed to a third party.
Dr. Drew, any comments on that or?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all the password stuff we know, but the reality is the reality, and I think the other portion is, besides your passwords, is really talk to your office staff about, social, social hacking, where somebody will call up, they may make like they're your IT person and give them access. Like that stuff is usually,
Huge.
it is actually much more common than actually just hacking in the systems. It's a lot easier to trick people into doing stuff that they shouldn't, all the emails you get. And, they used to be ridiculous of like you could spot them in a second. And they're hard now. You have to really look at the addresses. So be aware of the social engineering around this type of stuff within your office and have discussions with your office staff
Yeah.
about things to look for and safety procedures.
That
Looking
is
at
a
email addresses is especially critical because probably 50% of them you can just figure out from the email address that is strange or has some misspelling or something along those lines.
That is a big tip right there. That really is a huge thing. Those emails come in probably weekly and take that times how many employees you have. One person clicks on and something like that, and it can really throw your day a whack. Another thing, we had penetration testing done here because I just really wanted to learn more and really know where our vulnerabilities are, especially with, dealing with before and after photos. And believe it or not, one of the biggest ways you get hacked is, they have a little yellow sticky at their desk with a password written on it. Like you're saying, Dr. Drew.
Yeah. The other thing I will say, and this is not sort of photography related, obviously, but is systems related, is don't keep. Speaking of, a lot of EHR systems have like sticky notes. Do not keep credit card numbers around from patients, right? There's all sorts of ways to tokenize these things and do that in recurring payments now. Do not write do not write the people's credit card numbers down and leave them someplace, or leave them in a chart, because if that happens, you can be responsible for those charges, if you didn't do adequate to if you didn't have adequate diligence to protect those. And I know this is the doctor giving legal advice, but hopefully Chris will back me up on that.
I had another office that had a receptionist leave on almost no notice, and within a couple of days, they started getting complaints from patients that there was an unusual charge from on their credit cards. And we got to the, no, it didn't take us too long to realize what was going on. So to protect ourselves, we called the local FBI office because we thought that there was in fact some sort of credit card fraud scheme going on. I got to the special agent, who laughed when he heard who I was. We were just about to call your client, Mr. Newland, because we have traced a series back to your office. And getting on top of that when it does happen is really important. And based upon my experience, calling the local FBI office, reporting it as soon as possible protects your patients, and more importantly, protects you, because it shows that you're not trying to hide anything. You saw an anomaly and you went after it.
That's amazing. I would never have thought to call my local FBI office. Thank you. So we use something here. We use a password management system, and I preach it to all of our clients, and nobody really even listens, but I'm still going to. It is amazing. I probably have 200 passwords. Just me. The company probably 500. How are you going to keep track of all those and change them every once in a while? When an employee leaves, when an employee comes, for all the websites we have, how are we going to keep that secure? Even if I had 1/10 of that, how would I keep that secure, right? So this password management system, has a master password. You can have two-factor authentication with it if you want, but it manages all your passwords, and you just go in and you can change them with the click of a button. It updates it. Employee leaves, it's a one click, they're out. You don't even have to, it's like they can't log into anything. It's like changing the keys or whatever. So it's truly, for 6 or 8, $10 a month, it's definitely
And I
better.
would add the two-factor authentication is actually very important on that. It's fairly easy, but it increases the security exponentially.
Yeah. So anyway, we can always talk about that a little bit more. But did you know you can still get hacked
Yes.
without somebody knowing your password? So people come to me sometimes, they go, well, I'm paying this and that for hosting, and I'm paying this and that to my website company. Do I really need to? I go, well, what are they doing for that money? I said, are they keeping your website secure? Is it a WordPress website? What are they doing? If they're keeping your website running, just like you take your car to your maintenance guy and he changes the oil and keeps the tires running for you, then they're probably doing a decent job. But so anybody want to talk about, that way of getting hacked through out of date plugins on your website, or um,
Drew,
interesting?
I'll let you start off on this one.
I don't really know enough about it. We have a website company that is, I know that we like, and they've been good to work with, and they're very they're they seem very proactive about a lot of this stuff. But I sort of, on that front, and I consider myself very tech savvy. I mean, I used to work for a medical IT company in addition to my normal everyday plastic surgery job, so I
In
consider myself
addition to
pretty,
Master Chef.
in addition to MasterChef. And my tennis game, although Chris is still better than me. Um, the Yeah, I mean, I almost don't know what I don't know there. So you have to just choose vendors carefully, and I mean, it's sort of just doing your due diligence on your vendors and things like that. And it's easier too if you can have try to keep the number of vendors you have down to a manageable size. You know what you said about, do I need all these? You probably need all these services. And I agree, sometimes it's better, somebody does something better than the other. But from a business flow perspective, um, being able to not have 17 vendors when you can have, eight, it usually works out better. So just make those things. Oh, and that actually reminds me of what I was going to say earlier. Remember, I said I forgot? Sorry, I'm going to rewind. When we
Yeah.
were talking about photos, um, part of getting good photos is not only having the right tools, right? It's the office workflow. People significantly underestimate the office, who is in charge of getting the photos? Where are they done? When are they done in the patient journey? Are they done when they come back? Like having that workflow in place is really, really important to make sure you're getting consistency in getting photos, not only in the consistency of the photos themselves. So, obviously you need the tech, but if you don't use it properly and have the workflows in your office, and don't be afraid to change that up or do something different or to ask. The Florida Society is a great resource for that. A lot of us have good experience in this. So, ask colleagues, ask your societies, and ask the professionals you work with of how should I be using this? How should I be taking my photos? When should I take them? Do I take them when? So I'll give you a perfect example. When we do rhinoplasty, um, so I don't typically take photos at the time of consultation before I walk in the room, except for my rhinoplasty patients. So first of all, I usually have them send me photos. I, of course, give them all the information about, these aren't secure, but you can send them to us here. And we actually do have a secure text line. And then I will take those photos beforehand, have some idea what I'm going to talk to them about. And then if they're good quality, I will morph those photos before they get here. And if they're not, or they don't send them, we have the workflow that if those photos didn't exist and the morph isn't in their chart by the time they get here, to take new photos here before I even see the patient. So again, that's a workflow difference, between our rhinoplasty patients and other patients, and the rest of it, we have a different flow. So workflow is really important. So sorry, I backtracked on
No,
that one,
it's
Yeah.
a
but I
great
thought of
point. A
it.
great point. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um,
But yeah, as
so
far as vendors, yeah.
you do have a
And
good
just
website
remember, the
company.
more vendors you have that have access to your system, the more points of vulnerability that you do have. And you don't know which of those vendors in the event of a breach, you it's easier to go to two or three vendors, say, hey, we have a problem here, than it is to go to 15 or 20, some who may not be as reputable as you'd like.
So it's interesting, we deal with websites every single day and people come and go and some people stay. And by the way, you've got a reputable, Aetna is a reputable company. Dr. Drew, I believe they would take care of you in a heartbeat, no matter. Um, and but we do see some in our industry that don't keep plugins updated. That when they leave here, they don't update the records and take us off. We still have freaking access. We don't want access once they leave here,
Mhm.
and you, so we find that practices that move around a lot tend to not clean up after themselves. And they may, I mean, we can have information from two website companies ago come to us. So it's a, for those that are taking keeping things clean, they're great. But those that aren't, it is a problem.
And Candace, I know this is your show, but nevertheless, I'm going to put in the plug for you, which is, Candace redid with her team, redid the website for the Florida Society. And I mean, it was amazing. And when we sort of popped the hood on the car, it wasn't great. And there was a lot of stuff that was outdated. And, what I tell people is, your website is your entry. It's where most patients are going to first contact your office, even before they call. And so, that's got to be, it's like your waiting room. Like you wouldn't let your waiting room get all dingy and crazy and terrible. Your website needs to be, updated. It needs to reflect modern build and modern flow and work on mobile, which is what's the percentage that people that look on mobile versus
Oh, 80,
Candace?
90, 80 or 90.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of websites aren't optimized for mobile. So, I am so appreciative for what Candace and her team did for the Florida Society, and we've seen the difference in the traffic and the connections and just in looking at the darn thing. I mean, it is really and how it operates. So, bravo and thank you
Well,
for putting in all that hard work.
you're welcome. We truly, really have enjoyed it. It has been incredibly hard work.
Yeah.
But getting back to, so I'll have a doctor say to me, well, I have a 5-year-old website or I have a 7-year-old website, like, why can't I just move it to a host? And why do I even have, I go, a 5-year-old car or a 7-year-old car, would you think of just driving it to California without getting service or maintenance? Or think about your phone. How often does Apple run updates and you have to run that darn software update or you stand the risk of a hack? So just, it's
And
important.
I'm sure we all read those terms and conditions just like Chris just recommended to us. So,
Yeah, exactly. All right. So anyway, forms on your website, that's another, we're starting to get long here. Forms on your website, just keep them simple. Just keep them in the marketing forms and you'll be fine. Ask for name, what they're interested in, and email address, what time they might want to follow up, right? Just keep it very
Right.
simple. And you
And
won't
once you
run in.
start getting into the PHI, guiding them through your secure portal as soon as possible
Yeah.
is obviously the optimum solution on that. Get them into your secured environment where you can control it and exchange information freely as soon as possible.
So we have at least one more topic we had planned to talk about, and that's ADA and WCAG requirements. I'm going to say, hey, team, would you like to have a to be continued and we pick this up, or do you want to rush through it?
I at least want to give it a quick
All right.
overview because it is the source of many scams lately where I get it on I have a bar issued website and I daily get things. Hey, we've looked at your website and we've seen some things that we can either enhance or we see some deficiencies from a legal standpoint. And the bar, of course, is very good by saying, no, 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 no. Ours meets all those compliance checkpoints. In other words, don't take them at face value. Most of these are, in fact, scams who have never actually looked at your website.
Yeah.
They're trying to either get into it or they're trying to say, hey, in exchange for not reporting this, we're going to ask for $2,000. And again, that's $2,000 out of your pocket. That's probably not going to solve the problem.
No, they're just going to come right back and knock again.
If you
so
get
it's
one of these, what you think is a scam call your web designer. I mean, I know somebody can call you, Candace, and say, I got this email. And what you're going to say? No, I can guarantee you that we meet all the compliance check marks.
Absolutely. Dr. Drew, any last comments you would like
Well,
to make?
actually, it's funny, all of those emails, and I send it to all of these sort of scam emails, and Chris may tell me it's ridiculous, but it seems in my mind it's making an effect. I actually have a reply set up that I just copy and paste when I get this before I mark them as spam, and it says unsubscribed. It says your email has been flagged as a solicitation by our system. You may not solicit here. This is a violation of the CAN Spam Act, and you can be fined up to $16,000 per email,
Yeah.
which is actually has some truth to it. But I send this out, and I said you can also be for criminal charges, and I in my mind it works. It makes me feel better.
Yes.
So, Chris, does that have any
Yeah.
any truth of what I'm saying to them? I don't whether it
I'm not
works or
sure it
not.
really stops them, but it does feel better. I do it on behalf of society. People say that they have a Florida Society list of attendees, and I routinely write them back, Hi, I'm their lawyer. No, you don't have such a list. And to pretend that you do, this is being forwarded to the Attorney General's office in Tallahassee.
And this is why
Wow.
Chris is the best.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We sure do appreciate you both for coming on the podcast and talking today. I really, truly Really, truly have been looking forward to this one in particular. And you're welcome back anytime with any topics you want to talk about. I know our audience would be thrilled to hear from you again. So with that, if you want to tell our listeners best way to contact either of you, that'd be great. And I'll put that in the show notes. Dr.
If you have
Rosenthal,
any questions about to me, I'm available through the Florida Society or through the Aesthetics Society. Or if you if you need to contact me directly, just go to my dinosaur of an email, which is newlandlaw at AOL.com.
Newlandlaw at AOL.com. And we'll put that in the show notes, everything you said. And Dr. Drew, you're the outgoing president of FSPS. Uh,
Yes,
give us a
I'm the
little
immediate past president. So I'll
immediate,
be
yeah.
planning. So I'll be planning the meeting this year, which is going to be amazing. I'm going to give a little plug for the Florida Society meeting, which is in December. It's the 10th through the 13th this year. It's always at the Breakers, and it's amazing. And we've secured one of our speakers. Our Trutman lecturer is going to be Dr. Scott Levin, who is the chair at Penn, and is the reason I went into plastic surgery. And I'll tell that story at the meeting. But yeah, I'd love to have you, anybody who wants to, that's a board certified plastic surgeon, join us as a member of the Florida Society. FSPS.org is the website for the Florida Society. And happy to have you all email me if you have any questions about anything I talked about or I can ever be of help to anybody. And it's Dr. Drew, DRDREW, at rosenthal-md.com.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And we will put information for the Florida Society meeting in the show notes. And by the way, if you come, it's at the Breakers. You know,
That
so I
always is a
think
good
enough
marketing pitch.
said there. So
And you will not find a better room rate than you will in December than through FSPS. You'll be shocked.
you will totally be shocked. Yes. All right. Well, thank you both.